Okay, so welcome to part 2 of making this epic sword in Blender 2.91. Now, if you haven't already seen part 1, you can go check it out on my channel. I go through the whole modeling process. But this is part 2 where we set up the lighting and we also do the materials. And I'm going to show you where you can get some free textures, how to put them into Blender to make this really awesome final result, which, oh, by the way, is also going to be available on my Patreon. So let's get started with part 2. So first of all, you want to make sure you get the textures that I'm using. So they're 100% free. I'm going to put a link in the description. So the first one is going to be this one here, and you can choose any one of these ones here. I kind of went with the 2K JPEG one here. I'd recommend the PNG if you want to download such a large file. It'll be a bit better quality, but something like 2K is fine. 4K is a bit overkill, and 1K is maybe not enough, but just choose whichever one you want. And also the same with the lever here. So I also went with the 2K JPEG here. And once I had those two zip folders downloaded, I put them on my desktop like this, and I just extracted them. So one, it's the lever textures in here, these four, and then the other one I just called metal, which are these ones here. And these are the ones we're going to be using in our tutorial here to do the sword. So you can see there they are. So what we're going to do now is get into Blender, and we're going to continue this part 2 of making the sword. So once again, if you haven't seen part 1, go ahead and check that out on my channel. So what we're going to do first of all is make sure we're in the right engine. I'm going to be working with Eevee, so I'm going to go here to my render settings. I'm going to make sure the render engine is set to Eevee. Make sure to enable ambient occlusion, and also screen space reflections. If you're going to be working with emissive materials, make sure to enable bloom. I'm not going to be doing it in this tutorial, but something you might want to do, so think about it. So what we want to do also is get a nice epic pose for our sword before we put a camera on it. So we're going to go Shift A just to make things easier. Go to our empty options here, just add in a simple empty. It won't render in your final scene, so don't worry. And then we're going to just hit, with that empty selected, we're going to go Control A or Command A to inverse the selection, selecting everything else. Then holding in the Shift key, we're going to click on the empty here. It's now active, and we're going to go Control P, and we're going to go Object Keep Transform. So now all of these objects are parented to this empty here. So we can select the empty, we can rotate it, we can scale it down, whatever we want to do. So I'm just going to actually rotate it like this. Yeah, just something like that. And then I'm going to go R, Z, and rotate it in a little bit. So this is completely up to you. Then what I'm going to do, once I have a pose, so I'm going to go Shift A in my front orthographic view, add a camera. And you can just select that camera and just drag it wherever you want. So I'm going to just drag it back up a little bit and hit 0 to go into my camera view. And just adjust the camera, move it around. In fact, you can go to your camera settings and change the focal length. I'm going to make mine 125, and that's just what I prefer, but you can make it whatever. And I just move back a little bit, and I'm just trying to get something here that looks epic. So instead of rotating the camera, we can just select the empty here and move that around. You could rotate the camera if you wanted to. I just think it gets a little confusing. So just an empty here makes things nice and simple. So I'm going to get something that I think looks cool. So I'm going to go with that. And now we can get into adding in some basic lights, because obviously there's no point in doing shaders if we can't see anything. So if we went Z now, or Z, and we went rendered, obviously it's just all boring. So let's go Shift A, and we're going to go to our light options. I prefer to work with area lights, so I'm going to get an area light. And with this area light, I'm just going to move it forward in the scene, and then G, Z to move it up to about here. And in my right orthographic view, I'm just going to hit R to rotate it in. I'm going to come here to the light settings and increase the size to about 7 meters. And I'm going to come to the power here and make it something like 400. Then I'm going to hit Z, and I'm going to go rendered, and I'm going to see what it looks like. Okay, so that's a little bit underpowered, so I might go with something like 700, because at the moment this is quite a large scene. You could scale things down, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. If you need more power, just bump that up. Then in my top orthographic view, so if you hit 7, you go into your top orthographic. I'm going to hit G, move it over to the side, and then R to rotate it in. Then I'm going to go Shift D to duplicate it, move it over down here, and then R to rotate it in this way. So just these two lights like that for now. And then we're going to now get into our actual shaders, but after a while we will get into the lighting a little bit more. So that's just to give us something to look at. So let's start with our metal material. So let's just select the blade itself over here, so you can see the blade. And then we're going to go into our shading workspace, hit 0 to go into camera view, and then hit Z and make sure to go into rendered mode. So now we can start making the steel material. So select the blade, make sure it's active, And we're going to come over here to the material slot. I'm going to click on new, and let's call this material steel. Okay. And what we need to do is start grabbing those image textures. So what we're going to do is we're going to go Shift A, we're going to search, and we're going to get a texture, an image texture. So you can search here and get an image texture. And then you can plug that image texture into the base color here. Now you could also use the node wrangler. So if you go over to edit and you go preferences, go over to add-ons and you go over here to search, you can type in node, enable the node wrangler here by ticking it and then closing it. So now if you actually grab this image texture and you go Control T, it'll add in these two nodes for you automatically. So a mapping node and a texture coordinate. What we want to do here is we want to actually take the object here, plug it into the vector, just like that. And we want to come over here to the image texture and we want to make it box projection. So we don't actually have to UV unwrap any of this. And then I'm going to click on open. I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm going to get that metal file that I extracted. And I'm going to click on it, and it could be somewhere else on your computer, but I'm going to go and get the color, so the metal 2K color, and click on it, and I'm going to go open image. And you can see over here, we're seeing it now projected. It's way too large. So what we need to do, or way too blown up. So what we need to do is come over here to the mapping node, and we can come here to the scale at the top, make it 0.2, and we can come here to the Z scale and make it 0.2 as well. And now that's looking a little bit better. So you can mess around with these values. It really depends on what you're going for. At the moment, it still doesn't look like metal. So let's come over here to our principled shader. And we're going to come to the metallic slider and drag it all the way up to 1. And we're going to come to the roughness and drag that down to about 0.23. Okay? Still doesn't look fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in some more nodes. So let's actually grab this texture node here. We're going to go Shift D and bring it down. And we're going to come over here, click on the file, and the second one we're going to get is going to be the metal displacement. So open that one, Shift A down here, and search and type in bump. Click on the bump node, and we're going to take the color output here, plug it into the height. Then we take the normal and plug it into the normal of our principled shader. It's just this big one over here. And then we're going to come over here to our strength, and we're going to make it 0.2, and we're also going to come over here, grab this vector output for the mapping. Make sure to plug this node here, the vector, into the vector of this bottom image texture as well, so it knows how to display it. So now you can come over to this bump amount and you can affect how strong the displace is. So I'm going to bring it down to 0.08. It really depends on what you're going for. You can also mess around with this roughness a little bit more. But what we're going to do is also add some more nodes on there. So I'm going to go Shift A, search, and in fact, let's just get this image texture first. And we're going to go Shift D, duplicate it, and bring it down. Once again, make sure to grab the vector output of the mapping and plug it into the vector input here as well. And then make sure that's box projection. It should be fine. Click on the little folder, and this time we're going to get the normal, so the metal normal, open image. Then we're going to go Shift A, search, and we're going to get a normal map. So get a normal map. Take the color here, plug it into the color. And now, if you take this bump node over here, so if I just drag this up a bit maybe, you can take this normal and plug the normal from this normal map into the normal of the bump, and it's going to mix those two. So what we also need to do is just come over here to the normal image texture, and we just need to come here and actually to the normal one itself. So come to the normal map node and just make it object space. And also take the strength here and make it 0.2 as well. So you can mess around with that as much as you want. And the roughness, I think what I might do is just grab this area light here. I'm just going to rotate it down a bit and move it up. So you can also just experiment with the position of the lighting. Okay, so just rotate things around till it kind of makes sense to you. So I'm going to go with that. Okay, just something like that looks a little bit better. We'll mess around with it a bit later. Also with the metal here, yeah, just try and find something that works for you. So that looks okay to me. And once again, you can mess around with the strength here as much as you want. Now we're also going to take this part over here, this little metal part in the bottom. I'm going to come to the drop down and also give it that same steel material, just like that. And then we're going to do is we're going to create a gold material. But what we're going to simply do is we're going to reuse some of these nodes. So for the steel material, we're going to select all of these nodes, right click, go copy, then click on this handle part here, click new, and let's call this material gold. And then come to these nodes here, select these two nodes, hit X to delete them, right click, and then paste. But at the moment it still looks like steel, so all we're going to simply do is come over here to this metal color. I'm going to go Shift A, search, type in color, and then get the color ramp, and then place it on top of here. And now we can change the value. So we're going to click on the white value. We're going to make it kind of like a yellowish kind of color, and then grab the dark value here and kind of just make it like a darker kind of yellowy orange brown, and then drag it up a bit. And there we have our gold material. So you can kind of mess around with this as much as you want. Try different values. Maybe make that a little bit more saturated. So just experiment, see what works. But that looks like a nice kind of gold material. Might bring down the roughness on that just a little bit. Maybe not. So just experiment. And once you're happy with your gold material, it might look a little bit better once we get to more advanced with the lighting. But once you're happy with your gold, just select the other parts, like this part here, come to the drop down, give it the gold, and then also this part down here, just give it that same gold material. And that's looking good so far. So at the moment I'm happy with that, so I'm going to go on to the lever. So I'm going to select the lever material here. I'm going to click new, and then I'm going to just name it lever. So type in lever. And we're going to do the same thing. We'll select these two nodes, X to delete, right click, and let's still paste in those nodes. Only thing here is we don't want it metallic, so let's come to the principled shader, drag that value down because we don't want it to be metallic. Okay, so that's much better, and bring the roughness up a little bit. And then we're going to just come over here to the metal texture here. We're going to change the texture. So the top node here for the image textures, click on the file, and we don't want the metal texture, so I'm going to go back to my desktop. And I'm going to go to the lever texture, wherever I extracted that earlier file. And I'll click on the lever color, open image, and now we can see we have the lever there. Now I'm going to go down to the next image, and that's the displacement. I'm going to click on this folder, go to my desktop again, get that lever texture, and I'm going to get the lever displacement, open image, and then I'm going to go to the normal, the metal normal, and I'm going to change that one to the lever normal. So I'm going to go to my desktop again, go to that lever texture, and then just get the lever normal, open image. And now we have that. So you can also mess around with the strength of the normal map here to whatever you like. You can also mess around with the strength of the bump. So just experiment, try different things, mess around with the roughness if you want. Completely up to you. So that is how I made that. And also with the lever color here, if you don't like it, like I didn't like it, so I went Shift A, search, and I got a color ramp node, and I just placed it on the top input here of the top lever color image, and then I just selected this white marker here, and I've changed the value to a bit darker, and I kind of made it like a brown, so just like a nice browner kind of color. I like that a little bit more. And you can also mess around with this bottom slider here, make that a color. So that's one way you can kind of change the color of your kind of lever. And once again, if it's too glossy for you, just mess around with the roughness slider. Something like that looks absolutely fine. So these are the very simple image textures, and you can mess around with them as much as you want. But now is where we're going to get into some of the rim lighting here to really make this pop. So I'm going to go over to my layout again, go back into camera, and then hit Z and then go rendered. So make sure you're in rendered view. Then we're going to go over to our renders tab, our output settings, or render settings I should say, and you're going to go down to your film, and you click here on transparent. I just kind of like that a little bit better. And now we're going to go Shift A in our viewport, and we're going to add in under our lights a point light. With this point light here selected, we're going to go G, Z, and move it up. And then we're going to go to our light settings, and we're going to increase the radius a little bit, and then bump this strength up, like pull that slider till the strength is a bit higher. Just experiment until you get something that you like. So I'm going to go over about 120, and I'm going to move it just so it's sitting behind the back of the sword here, just like that. And then in my camera view, I'm going to go Shift D to duplicate it and just move it around. And what we're doing here is we're creating what's called rim lighting. So this is lighting that's coming from the back. And I'm just going Shift D, I'm duplicating another light, placing it right there, and then one down here. So this is something you can experiment around with, but what it gives us is kind of like, it takes whatever the object is or the subject matter, and it just kind of makes it stand out from the background a little bit. So if I grab these rim lights here, and I hit H to hide them, you can see it looks kind of dull, but if I unhide them, you can see what a nice difference it makes. So I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to select this one, Shift D, and I'm going to make a nice rim light at the top here, and then one going down like this, and then all along the blade here. So with the blade, we might actually have to come in there and just move it in a bit. So just try different things, see what works. So I'm going to go Shift D, move this up, Shift D, move one down here. So I'm just hitting Shift D to duplicate them, and it's just a matter of placing them around here till you kind of see it standing out from the background. That's what I really love about rim lighting, and really it's one of those things that can just absolutely set a render apart. So I really am a big enthusiast when it comes to rim lighting. Once again, have a look at it now. I'm going to select all of these rim lights. If I hit H to hide them, look how dull the lighting looks. If I hit Alt H, look what a difference it makes. So it really does speak for itself. Now you can also at any time grab these main lights here, the main area lights, and you can also move them around and try different things. It's really just up to you. I'm trying to kind of create like a 3-point lighting system here, or maybe even 2 points. Just experiment. It's just one of those things where it's not like I can do a tutorial on it as much as I want, but on the end of the day, your scene might be a little bit different, how you made your sword, how you place things. So it is going to be a matter of fiddling around with the lights. And even a lot of the best Blender artists out there, whether it's Blender Guru or whatever, and behind the scenes when they're making like a final render, they're spending a lot of time with the lighting and experimenting with different things. It's not just something you just do just right off the bat in most cases. So it's just a matter of experimenting and trying different things. So yeah, that is the lighting of our sword here. And one thing I also did is I selected some of these point lights and I duplicated them and I scaled them up a little bit bigger, but I changed the color. So I kind of made them like maybe a little bit of a blue, and I brought them more forward in the scene. And what this gave me the ability to do was to make this nice kind of blue kind of effect like that. Increase the size of them. You know, I thought it kind of looked cool. Something you can do. It's not working as well right now. So, and I might duplicate it, bring another one over here, and make that a bit of a different color. I think something like this nice kind of red and blue color blend makes it kind of look a bit more epic. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. So one of those things you can consider and experiment with. So that is our blade, our nice epic blade over here. Just maybe duplicate another light. So yeah, try different things, see what you come up with. So this is the sword, all done, all lit up, and let's do a final render. So I'm gonna go render image, and let's see what it looks like. And there we have it. Here we have a nice epic battle sword. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I will be making this blend file available on my Patreon. So if you guys are on Patreon, check that out. And if you have any questions, you know, ask in the comment below. I may not see it, but if I do, I'll try and answer. But yeah, so there it is. Pretty cool and not hard to do. I'll see you guys next time for another Blender tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed this. Stay safe.